For decades, I've heard the same thing about Meshuggah, that they're not human. That they're some kind of alien cyborgs sent from the future to scramble our brains with rhythms that shouldn't be possible. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. There's always been this mystery about them. How do they write this stuff? How do they play it so tight? How do they get that pulverizing massive sound with what we know is uncomplicated digital gear, like the Line 6 Pod 2.0 or Steinberg's VST amp rack? It's a question that's baffled producers and musicians for years. I'll be honest, I didn't even know that this Making of Koloss documentary existed up until 2 days ago, but I'm excited to see it. We're going to watch it together and see if it gives us any insight into how they actually do what they do beyond myth and legend. Let's see if we can find out what's actually behind one of the most important metal bands of all time. Let's get into it.
Exakt så det går till varenda jävla gång.
Som vanligt. Panik i blicken.
Sen har du en budget att hålla dig till och så har du två en faktiskt tidsplan som du ska hålla dig till. Så du kan aldrig riktigt göra exakt det som vore det optimala. Alltså i huvudet. Sen blir det säkert hur bra som helst och man blir typ nöjd. Men det blir aldrig riktigt dit man siktar. Eller för oss blir det så i alla fall.
I think that part of being in a band and making records, really doing anything creative, is realizing that it's never going to be this idealized version of what you were going for, because you live in the physical world and there are constraints and you have to stop at some point. And sometimes also what your vision is for something isn't actually creatable. Like, it's not something that can exist in the real world. It can exist in your fantasy. So you need to be okay with, I don't want to say settling, but living with what you can actually create in the world. In the case of a band like Meshuggah, it's something awesome that even they themselves aren't totally satisfied with, but that's okay. That's why they keep getting better. And I think that those of you who are making records and feel like they're not good enough, or you're stopping yourself because they're not perfect yet, they feel it too, but they still keep making records, as should you. They're so fucking good.
On this recording, it's a Sonar SQ.
Hold on. What do I see right there on his tom? There's a trigger on that tom right here. Yep. So, we just put out a video, our drum triggers cheating. A lot of people are saying that good drummers don't need triggers or real drummers don't use them. But I don't know anyone who can tell me with a straight face that Thomas from Meshuggah isn't one of the best drummers on the planet. And there he is using them. They have nothing to do with your skill level.
I kind of changed my setup over the last few years, and now I basically stripped away tom after tom and actually went with less cymbals too, even though it's plenty still. But I used to have a 12-inch tom here. I took that away for ergonomic reasons, basically. This way I have the two hi-hats similar height and kind of near me. Makes it easier for a lot of the work that we do with Meshuggah.
So he's talking about simplifying his kit, taking away toms, taking away cymbals. And notice all these distances here between the cymbals and away from the toms. This is a drummer that's making it very easy to record him. All these distances here, between cymbals and toms and just all this space allows for there to be a lot less bleed in the microphones. You get a much better direct sound. It's easier to mix, easier to edit, easier to work with. Sometimes you work with death metal drummers or some drummers who will have their cymbals half an inch above the toms. And you just got to deal with it. But if you could get them to raise their cymbals, that's even better. Some will, some won't. Best drummers to record are the ones who just come in with their cymbals raised because they already know that they're a partner in making this great recording with you.
So the drum heads are all Evans, G2s on the...
Hey, look. Trigger on the snare.
Sättet vi gör det på nu, vi sitter ju vi egentligen vid varsin dator. Vissa sitter hemma och skriver musik. Och sen liksom så spelar man upp det eller skickar det till varann.
So keep in mind that this was made in 2011. They're already all working in their own personal workstations and sending tracks back and forth to each other. I bet you they don't even practice it as a band. Let's see if he says that. But nowadays, this is super common. This is how modern bands work. I was talking to my A&R Metal Blade once about this. He told me that barely any of the bands on Metal Blade that he works with all live in the same city. It's just not the way it used to be. So this whole remote working thing, I know a lot of people don't like it and think that bands need to get together and work in the room, but I mean, bands like Meshuggah prove that you don't have to do it that way. And they've been doing it for a long time. Long before this was made, I think they were ahead of the curve with the remote working situation.
Det är någonting som vi har hållit på med ganska länge.
Alltså, tanken var ju jävligt god att vi skulle liksom spela allting i studion och repa allting och få in det liksom.
För varje låt som blev klar så skulle vi...
Oh, wow. So this time, the idea was to actually rehearse it together. I guess what Thomas was saying is that they're used to working remote, but they try to do something different on every record. So on this record, what they're going to try differently is to all work on it together.
Och vi klarade faktiskt det. På en låt. Sen återgick vi till en sån här fas som vi försökte ta oss ifrån, fast mer van vid.
I rest my case. So they tried to work together in the same room and do it the old school band way, but after one song went back to doing it remote. Honestly, remote is such a great way to work because you can take the time to really craft your parts and people still get their feedback. You can still collaborate, but for a lot of people it is a superior way to work.
Det är ju inte nödvändigtvis någonting negativt. Det negativa är ju liksom att man aldrig liksom egentligen spelar ihop som ett band innan vi gör en platta, utan alla låtar är egentligen nya för alla i alla situationer under inspelningen.
Okay, so what he just said about how it's bad that they never play together before the recording process and how the songs are all new to them during the recording process. If you saw my Periphery reaction where I pointed out that they were recording drums at the end after recording everything else, that's exactly what it aims to solve. It aims to solve this type of situation where for the drummer, he's playing parts for the first time while recording, and then everybody is kind of adjusting to that, and there's going to be changes to the songs maybe, and it's tougher than if you record everything besides the drums and really work the songs out. And then the drummer has, through the whole making of the record, to learn the parts, finalize the parts, and then record them at the end. You'll get a much better performance out of the drummer and need much less edits. And the drum parts are going to be tailored to the song already. So that's one way to solve for this problem because, yeah, just coming into the studio when the songs are barely written and just being like, go, that's I mean, great bands have done that for a long time, but it's not necessarily ideal. And there's more, I guess, more productive ways to go about it now.
Det här är så jävla kung. Jag tappar alltid räkningen när jag är på överkant också. Vänligheten bara.
Me too.
Vi kör igenom XFX bara för att få ut det digitalt via SPDIF. Så kör vi in allting i Cubase. Så har de en plugin. Pedaler och förstärkare och högtalare och effekter. Och så kan man sätta mikrofonen på olika sätt. Och det låter så jävla bra så att det finns ingen anledning att hålla på med.
I absolutely love this. Meshuggah have some of the best guitar tones out there. They just sound so devastating. And they're saying there's no need for traditional amps anymore. They're not even using the Axe effects for tone. They're just using it for DI and then using this Steinberg Cubase VST amp rack, which is a stock amp sim. They're saying that this sounds great. And I'm sure it sounds great. We haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure it sounds great. I just think it's hilarious. I remember when Meshuggah came out, or when they first were like really starting to get popular in the metal scene, there was a rumor that they used to play the old Line 6 Pod 2.0s and that was their tone. And people didn't believe it because they didn't believe you could sound that way with pods. But I've always believed it because Meshuggah have always been known for taking gear that isn't known for being the best of the best and just getting tremendous sounds out of it and just sounding great. Just proving the thing we all know, that it's the player, not the gear.
Så allting vi spelar in låter liksom så här.
Yeah, that's the DI signal going out of the Axe effects.
Om vi skulle vara missnöjda liksom med det här gitarrljudet så kan vi göra i princip vad som helst. Men i vanliga fall kör vi med Axe-effects. Den är ju egentligen ännu bättre. Det är bara det att du vet, börjar man med den så kan man aldrig sluta. Man blir aldrig nöjd. Alltså det går att göra så mycket så att man blir typ irriterad. Det finns liksom aldrig ett slut.
He's talking about option paralysis, which is a very real thing. It's the trap with a lot of this digital gear. It's a trap! While he's admitting that the Axe effects is probably better than the plugin, they use the plugin because it's so much simpler. You just get the sound and go. Whereas with the Axe effects, once you start tweaking, you can tweak and tweak and tweak. You get to this point where you don't know if you're making things better or just different. We've all gone down these rabbit holes. And that's why it's so important to just commit. Find something that works and commit. If you commit to something that ends up being not that good, you can always change it later. But the last thing you want to do is to sacrifice progress because you're just going down the rabbit hole and down the rabbit hole and making it different, but not necessarily better, and oftentimes worse. Listen to how fucking tight he sounds, just like casually playing along to that. With great players, you know immediately. You know from them playing one or two notes or strumming a chord or just chugging a couple things. Like, you know immediately that they're phenomenal players. All you need to hear is him playing opens along to that drum beat to know this is a top-level guitar player, because you just hear how fucking tight and just deadly that sounds. And it's through camera audio.
Vi har ju det här med att göra demos och sitta med datorn och liksom, vi har fått läckrare och läckrare verktyg hela tiden. Liksom när vi höll på med R5, när man bodde upp i Umeå och satt med R5 i någon sorts jävla hemmasnickrat bord som såg för jävligt ut med portan. Då var det ju så här liksom att så lät det väl ganska kackigt, men det var nära någonting. Men nu jävlar, då har vi ju, nu låter det ju schysst om demosarna man gör.
And that was 2011. Now it's even more true. Holy shit. The level of mixes that you hear coming out of home studios now is it's mind-blowing. I've kind of feel like I've had a front row seat to it because at Nail the Mix we've been doing the mixing competition, the monthly mixing competition for 10 years now. Every single month people are handing in hundreds of mixes. So for 10 years straight, every month, hearing hundreds and hundreds of mixes. The mixes that you hear nowadays compared to when we first started are mind-blowingly good. Mixers are getting so damn good. It's crazy. It's really, really inspiring, actually. Oh, they're human after all. They practice just like everyone else, looking at Guitar Pro and explaining it to each other. Go figure. Even though this is camera audio, that bass tone sounds fucking sick. There's a lot of controversy about bass in metal because lots of times they're just doubling the guitar line an octave lower. I know a lot of people have problems with that because oftentimes bass in other genres of music will follow the kick and not play the riff. But the thing is, metal is not like other genres of music. The bass guitar doubling the guitar is actually part of what makes the guitar tone sound as massive as it does. I've been saying for years that a great guitar tone is not just a great guitar tone. It's a combination of the guitar, the bass, mostly the high end of the bass, but a really, really gnarly bass tone, and sometimes even the high end of the kick. All that put together is what gives this guitar tone with teeth that you know and love. And you can prove that by muting everything else and just listening to guitars alone. Often they'll sound sick, but it's just not the same as when the bass is in there. So really, in lots of ways, I kind of think of bass and metal as not a third guitar, but it's kind of like a third guitar.
Jag gör ju låtar, men då det börjar från ett rytmiskt perspektiv. Vissa låtar, ett par låtar på den här nya skivan, det har egentligen börjat från trummor. Och då klipper jag kan ta gamla inspelade gitarrfiler och pitcha, klippa och time-stretcha och göra gitarriff. För jag kan inte lira gitarr. Liksom.
The fact that he's a drummer, he starts a lot of songs with rhythmic ideas and then takes old recordings of other riffs or notes on guitar and cuts and time stretches. I mean, that right there is a perfect use of these digital tools. A lot of people talk about how metal has become like EDM and they talk down on people using these tools. But think about this scenario where a drummer wants to write, but they don't play another instrument. This is a great way for them to communicate their ideas to other people. Even if you don't use these types of techniques on the actual recording, but just knowing these types of techniques so that you can communicate with other people effectively is such a smart way to do things.
Jag har möjlighet att få mina låtar igenom. Vilket annars skulle vara svårt om jag inte kan lira gitarr. Och kan man inte presentera någonting annat än bara ett trumbit så är det väldigt svårt för någon annan att känna någonting för det.
What's really, really smart about his approach to writing where he is actually giving them demos with notes is that he's trying to get their attention and trying to sell them on actually finishing the songs. When you're working with other people, even if you trust each other and you like each other and everybody's got their role, you still need to have the band members or the producer or A&R, whoever, get excited about the stuff that you're bringing to the table. And if you present it in a way where they have to do too much imagining of what it could be, if there's not enough of like a clear vision or a clear, this is what this is, you might have a hard time getting people on board. And that's unfortunate. So if you think about drummers who don't have tools like these, don't know how to play instruments, and are trying to communicate song ideas, they're at a serious disadvantage. And learning these tools basically evens out the playing field. And look at how much more opportunity they have for great songs.
Man blir trött. Alltså, du kan inte sitta och mata 8 timmar och spela gura och tro att, det ska liksom, att du ska ha objektiviteten. Det går inte liksom. Det var...
One of the biggest points of tension that I had as a producer working with bands is when they would stay with me. I had lodging at my house, and so they would stay with me 24/7 for several weeks or even if just a weekend. The idea that we have a stop time was really tough for people, especially because I know they were thinking, well, you're here, may as well keep working. And to them, it's very exciting because it's their album. They've been working on it for a long time to get to this point, and all they want to do is work on it and work on it and work on it. But there comes a point with diminishing returns. And I've seen this specifically with these high-powered metal drummers where, you know, they're basically like athletes. They just want to go and go and go and go and go. But there comes a point where their playing just starts to decline. And because they push themselves so hard, they're not really willing to accept that. So even if you've been tracking for like 9 hours and you've gotten 2 songs or 3 songs done, they could physically stay awake and keep going and do 2 more, but they're physically declining. And to tell them, we need to stop now, you need to get some rest, is a tough conversation to have, but a very important one to have, because you could sit there for the next 6 hours and kind of start to get something mediocre, or you could come back the next day and do the same thing in 30 minutes or an hour, and it'll be great. There's no reason to stay up. There's no reason to keep going. You need to rest. You need to recharge the brain, recharge the ears, recharge the hands, and come back fresh. It's something I've never regretted doing. The only tough part is, if you have a guilty voice like I do, where you feel like a loser, convincing yourself that it's the right thing to do, or convincing somebody else who also has that guilty voice that's the right thing to do. That's the challenge, but worth it.
När fick jag alldeles nyss? Bandlös.
Fretless guitar. Those sound better in theory than they are in real life. I mean, he does a great job with them, but they are difficult to play. That bass adds so much. God, it's so good. Not trying to just like keep saying, God, that sounds good, but God, that sounds good. That was sheet music, not tablature. Pretty cool. You know, you don't meet that many people in modern metal that can actually read music. Everybody can read tab, or everybody should be able to read tab, but actual notation, that's rare.
Och man tycker att men det är så här och så här och så här. Och det är inga större svårigheter liksom. Och så går man ner och så helt plötsligt ska man sätta sig och spela bakom trummorna. Och så märker man att det här är ett tempo som jag inte alls behärskar liksom. Och det är inte så enkelt, så kan man ju bara tycka att det är bara ändra tempo. Men många gånger kanske är det så att man kanske kan ändra lite grann om BPM hit och dit. Men det brukar inte hjälpa liksom så mycket för hur bekväm man är med tempot. Utan oftast är det ju att en låt står och faller lite grann med att den kan vara just det här tempot. För att gitarrerna, det är skrivet på ett visst sätt som gör att blir det en snabbare låt av det så tappar den liksom kanske, eller det kanske inte ens nästan går att lira på gitarr. Tar du ner det, då blir den för seg och så vidare.
Yeah, that ideal tempo he's talking about is so important, and sometimes it's a per riff type of thing. Like sometimes it's not just the song needs its ideal tempo, but sometimes it's every riff has its own ideal tempo. The difference between finding it and not is exactly like he said. If it's too fast, the guitar parts sound rushed, almost get unplayable. If it's too slow, it'll feel like it's dragging. But it's not just the guitars, it's also the vocals. If it's too fast, you need to be able to ensure that the vocalist can actually get the words out and that there's enough space for the words to like actually have their impact, but you also don't want it to be too slow to where, again, feels like it's dragging. And there's also the playability issue on the drums. So finding that exact ideal tempo, the Goldilocks zone, it's beyond important. I think it's everything.
Det är så jävla äckliga tempon.
Ja, det är,
den där låter
det är
ju
fruktansvärt
helt
tempo.
sjukt.
Ja,
Man måste typ vara...
Vidrigt tempo. Ja, alltså.
Det känns som den går för sakta. Alltså det är för...
Ja, det kanske den gör.
Ja, det...
Vad är det nu, 85?
Ja.
I like that when he's saying that the tempo is too slow, he's saying that it's fucking terrible. Like he's not saying, I kind of don't like it, doesn't feel great. He's saying it's terrible. So you know exactly where he stands on it. I like people that communicate directly and to the point, so you don't have to guess how they're feeling about something.
Ja, du måste spela, du får gå ner och spela och så får jag trycka på min iPhone. Se vad det är för tempo du känner bara, fan det här är the shit.
Ja, det är ett alternativ också.
Ja, men vi måste göra så.
Ja.
Och sen spelar vi in den så, och så sen håller vi bara för öronen och ögonen och så munnen framförallt.
Vad är det för tempo det här?
95.
Det är inte så jävla snabbt. Det blir det.
Notice he said that they're going to close their eyes. It's because they don't want to be thinking about what the actual tempo number is. They just want to feel. They want to hear it and feel what sounds right. He said also close their mouths, as in talk about it as little as possible. That's how I'm interpreting it. Just feel the tempo, find the right tempo, and don't say like, oh, it's 90 and say, oh, 90 is too fast because you think 90 is too fast. Shut up and just feel it and go with what feels right.
Då har vi som jobbar med låtar samtidigt som Thomas har lirat in trummor och sen har vi lagt sång så att allting har liksom hänt lite pö om pö och vi hade hoppats på att ha mer tid så att det skulle kännas som en mer naturlig process. Nu har det blivit samma panik.
So yeah, they're kind of recording things all at the same time, probably in different rooms, and he said he wished he had more time on his hands, but it ends up in panic as usual. And I feel like that's every single project ever. You always wish you had more time, and it always ends up in panic towards the end because the amount of work always tends to scale to the length of time that you have. I don't know why it works that way. Honestly, I think creative people, myself included, thrive under high pressure situations. I feel like sometimes we kind of create this for ourselves because we do better with it.
Samtidigt så i slutändan kan det bli något jävligt coolt av det, för vi har aldrig riktigt gjort det så här förut. Att man har liksom känt på sakerna simultant så att säga, istället för att liksom göra allting i sjok. Man får lite mer perspektiv och så är det lite mer rättvist mot till exempel sången, för annars har den alltid hamnat alldeles innan Fredrik ska lägga solen. Då ska Jens liksom helt plötsligt bara ha lite tid på sig att skrika i slutet typ. Det är inte riktigt schysst.
Yeah, so this is a much better way for a vocalist to work because you're tracking vocals from the very beginning instead of just squeezing them in at the end, like has happened on so many metal records where you spend 4 weeks or 5 weeks doing everything else and then 2 days on the vocals. That's just craziness. It really is smarter to start the vocals as early as possible so that the vocalists can get plenty of rest and like really work on their parts, and especially if their throat is starting to go or something, they can take a day or two off and like limit the sessions to like 2 hours and just make sure that whenever they're tracking, they're just in peak condition, and then you can really think about the parts and make sure that they're great, because after all, if the vocals suck, your record sucks.
Fan, hur gick det där till? Du tog ingen luft där, men du körde ändå hela vägen.
Bort.
Vad säger du?
Jag glömde bort den när jag bara kör.
Ja, det är inte så.
Because he's a beast. Because his breath control is insane. I mean, that's something that really good screamers kind of have on lock, is Their breath control has to be out of this world.
Vi siktar ju alltid på att lägga sången så enkelt som möjligt, men i och med att musiken ofta är har mycket indelningar, synkoper, och det kan vara väldigt mycket liksom mönsterbaserat, så är det ju svårt att ha sången bara helt rakt över, för det ska inte låta klokt liksom.
I think that approach to the vocals is part of why Meshuggah has appealed to a wider audience for how crazy their music is. Like, they are a legitimately big metal band, and you don't expect bands that are this musician-y to get this far. And I think that part of it is because the vocals are a lot more straightforward. So with all this chaos going on in the music, the vocals are kind of like the anchor, which is weird because in a lot of metal, the anchor is the drums. You'll be mine in the way. Grind my teachings on the soul. Notice the veins in his neck.
Alltså, i normala fall så har ju jag mixat skivorna, vilket är helt banalt, för jag kan inte mixa. Jag vet vad jag vill höra och så sen försöker jag göra det, men det tar så jävla lång tid så att det är bara dumt.
It can be very mentally taxing to mix your own band, but he's not alone. Most mixers think that they're no good at it.
Frågade vi Danne om han var intresserad. Och det var han.
But I guess this time he decided he didn't want to deal with it. So it looks like they're going to Daniel Bergstrand, which is one of the best. Great guy and one of the best. I just need to say that the Nail the Mix that we did with Daniel Bergstrand for Meshuggah, even though it was for a song off Destroy, Erase, Improve, is one of the best experiences in my life. Such a great mixer and such a great band. I'll quit talking though, let's keep going.
Han är fantastisk på det viset. Han kan ju verkligen förstå vad man säger när man pratar om hur det ska låta, och det gör han ju till med alla band. Han är ju...
So Frederick is saying that something that's really good about Bergstrand is that he really understands when you give sound ideas or ideals. I'm not sure if he meant ideas or ideals, but it doesn't matter. The point is, when you give Daniel Bergstrand an idea for a sound, he understands it. And that's one of the number one jobs for a mixer or producer, to be a musical translator, to work with musicians and hear what they have to say for what they want, listen to their vision in words, and know how to translate that into sounds coming out of the speakers. If you want to be a good mixer and a good producer that works with other people, you have to have that skill. Well, it's not aliens and it's not magic. It's work and it's intention. It's a group of guys in a room for hours and hours being brutal with their ideas until they get it right. We saw them dialing in tones, not with some mythical piece of gear, but with their ears. We saw them tracking not as perfect robots, but as musicians with feel who know when a take has the right energy. This reinforces the single most important thing we talk about at URM. Your brain and your ears are what matter most. You can have all the plugins in the world, but if you don't have a vision and the work ethic to see it through, you've got nothing. Greatness isn't about having the most expensive gear. It's about knowing how to get the most out of the tools you do have. This is the kind of stuff we break down every single month on Nail the Mix. And if you want to go way deeper with this stuff and see how Daniel Bergstrand actually mixed Meshuggah's Future Breed Machine and get the raw multi-tracks, you should check out his Nail the Mix session at the link in the description. It's a perfect deep dive into the creation of some legendary metal. If you like this breakdown, let me know in the comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.